Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Costume Co. It's Heidi, and today I have an amazing guest. I'm so excited to have her. It's Anne Dixon, and she's here to talk about her new movie, The Dead Don't Hurt. And I'm so excited to have you, Anne. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I'm thrilled. I'm just so excited, and it's fantastic to be here.
Yeah, and I was sort of stalking you on Instagram, so I appreciate you responding to me.
That's why it's there, a way for people to kind of get in touch with you, and it's always wonderful to hear from people and to be able to respond. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about The Dead Don't Hurt, but before we do, I would have to do this. Ask you a little bit about Anne with an E, which is how I sort of came to know you,
Hmm.
and a lot of you have a huge fan base of Anne with an E fans out there. So my question for you is, while I know you only designed season one, what was your reaction to this sort of movement to have the show brought back? There was a whole petition around that. In fact, my friend Patrick was one of them. He was out like rallying the troops. What was your reaction to that whole thing?
I mean, I was amazed, and I was, first of all, when I was approached to do it. And I just thought, oh my God, like, why do you want to flog this old horse again? Do you know what I mean? It's been done. And I mean, as a child, I mean, Anne with an E myself, with the red hair, I mean, it was very close to my heart. But then Maura Wally Beckett really had an edge around it, that how she wanted to approach it. And then Nikki Caro did the two pilots, the two first episodes, and I just thought, this is really interesting because it's a really gritty side of it, and it's a really more realistic, and I think it's not as sugary coated and as Disney-ish as the other versions were, and I think people could probably relate more. And then we just realized how much people related, and then it was just like it was insane. And the fans still to this day are really vocal, and I was only able to do the first season, but then I was, really got those, which we did, I think, 20 some episodes or something of the sort. And really did a good foundation to the characters. And then unfortunately, I wasn't able to do the second and third because I was in the midst of changing unions and therefore wasn't allowed to do it, which broke my heart. But at least there was a platform to start it. And yeah, the fans are just incredible. And it's so wonderful to see how it touches everyone in the world. It's not just a Canadian story. And so it's exciting.
Yeah, I was going to tell you that I hadn't watched it yet, but my friend Tatiana, she actually lives in Puerto Rico. And she said, Heidi, have you seen Anne with an E? And I said, no, I haven't. She says, oh my gosh, you have to watch it. Isn't that funny? So, and
Yeah.
I've had lots of, I have a video on it. I've had a lot of comments from people all over the world about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And which brings me to actually, I have this one viewer. His name is William, and he's bought like a large amount of costumes up from different types of shows. And he messaged me saying, "Hey, I bought like Marilla and Anne and Matthew's costumes from Anne with an E, and he's hoping to open up a museum. So I have a few pictures. Can I show these to
Wow.
you? He just sent them to me last night.
Absolutely, because I'd love to know what it is.
Yeah. So here's I think this is Matthew. Does this look familiar to you?
Okay. The vest is, the jacket, no.
Yeah, because he
The
had a leather
trousers,
jacket, I
yes.
think?
Yeah, he had a leather one and he had a
Yes.
canvas one, just a plain colored canvas one.
Okay, so I'll have to, talk to William to see maybe he's matched up the wrong piece with this.
Yeah.
He has more pictures, but then, of course, he has the iconic Anne with
Oh,
an
wow.
E.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can see the darning and everything on
Yeah. It
her,
was really
on her
important. And it's also like even the hem, it's as if she
Mhm.
only had one outfit that she outgrew. And so we had kind of done it with the hem and then bleached just the edge as if it would be used, and then the dress would be let down more. So, and you can see from the photograph here that there is actually a little demarcation in the colors and the hem of it, and then the darning as well, and so forth. And wow, that's amazing that he was able to get them.
I know. And I actually, now I know it wasn't from your season, but I bought Anne's flower wreath and her parasol. So I have that in my
Okay,
collection.
okay. Oh,
So I think that's from when Alex did it. But yeah, I just wanted to let you know. I was actually going to
yeah.
talk to William. Maybe he'd like to have it as part of his collection. So I'll have to get the rest of the photos and show those to you later. But anyway, so the reason why
Well, I
we're
can
here though
always
is
send him, like if he does it, I can send him this, a copy of the sketches and so forth. He's more than welcome to use it in his display if he wishes.
oh, that's amazing. Yeah, so he's in Minnesota and he's hoping to open up a museum. He's got like, all like I don't even know how he's gone about doing this.
Mhm.
And where he's keeping them, but he has done some temporary exhibits just for charity, like they people donate money to go to the exhibit. So but that's his dream. He's this young man who wants to open up a museum, and I'm all for it. Like I'm like, yes, do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so
Because
give us our contacts, and if I can help him in any which way, I'd be more than happy.
oh, that's amazing. So, yeah, so we're here to talk about Dead Don't Hurt. And part of my message to you was I had seen it at TIFF. I got like tickets to go see it. I went by myself. It was so much fun. So, of course, the big surprise, I go to a regular viewing and Viggo himself was there to introduce the
Mhm.
film and also to answer some questions. And we were all in the audience going, oh my God, I can't believe he's here, especially given what was going on with the strike. So that must have been, and I know you went to the gala. So what was
Mhm.
that experience like for you, being in the audience with all of the viewers?
It was incredible. I mean, I was nervous. I was excited. Because I hadn't seen. Usually, you see a rough cut of the film beforehand, but I hadn't, and I'd seen the rushes, but you don't know how it all kind of melts together, and so I was anxious just to see it all and see what had made it and what hadn't made it, and also it's always funny the first time you see a film that you've worked on, you relive a lot of the scenes. So it's kind of like, oh, that's the day it was really, really hot, or that's the day that, the scorpions were running like crazy, or, things like that. And, what I was amazed with the film is that usually you get lost in those things for the first time you see it when you've worked on it. But I was completely engrossed in it, and I was just like riveted. And then to hear where the audience was laughing or where they were, like taken aback, and it was just really, really, really special and was wonderful.
Now, I know you have been working in television and film as a costume designer for many, many years. Well, why don't you just tell me a little bit about your background?
Well, I first started most probably when I was younger. I would play with my dolls and make my Barbies make the clothes instead of playing with them. And then I got a real live doll. My sister was born, and then I started making clothes for her. Then we moved to England, and I did art and design course at the University of Arts of London. Then I came back to Canada and became a gypsy, really, and I just worked in theater from across the country in Stratford, and in all sorts of different positions, and eventually started designing. And then from there, I had an opportunity to work at the CBC when they were still making a lot of productions, and that was incredible. And I designed some series, some films, some dance, and some operas, and skating. And then I went freelance. And since then, I try and not corner myself too much. And I like to explore. I like to keep searching for different things. And I do a whole variety of different genres.
Do you have a favorite genre that you like to do?
Um, No, not really. Everyone is completely individual, and that's what's so wonderful about it. Um, Probably, though, if there's music involved, and if at some point in the film, or if the characters are really good, you know, period, of course, because you have maybe more of a control that you can explore the whole visuals, um, than contemporary. It's different. But I'm passionate about what I do, and just absolutely love it. So, as long as the story's good and the people are interesting that I'm going to be working with and collaborate with, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, that seems to be a common thing I get from a lot of designers. They don't tend to have a particular genre that they prefer, but it's usually the story, the script, if it speaks to them, I
Mm,
suppose.
yeah.
So my next question for you is, now I know you have worked with Viggo before, Viggo Mortensen. I'm hoping I'm saying his name correctly. I hope, I should
Hmm.
have it well
Yeah.
by now. So you worked on his film Falling in 2020, and I saw that a lot of the a lot of the crew came back, a lot of the production staff. So do you want to tell me a bit about that?
Yeah. Um, the thing with Vigo, he's such a Renaissance man. I mean, he knows 6 languages fluently, writes them, and is completely speaks them. Not like myself, and I'm struggling here. And he, composes. He writes. He is a director. He's a producer. He's an actor, of course, as well. So his extensive and vast visual artistic vocabulary is phenomenal, and he has such great respect for the crafts. And one of the things that's so exciting with him as well is that he's going to be just as interested and just as blown away when you find the tiny little metal buttons for the blouse, and he loves it just as much as you do. And so that's always fabulous. But what's great about Vigo is that he's an incredible collaborator, and very respectful for each of our own crafts. And we started off with Falling, his first film that he's directed and wrote. Carol Spears was a production designer on that, and as well as The Dent Don't Hurt. And Carol's been the production designer for Cronenberg for predominantly, I think, all of his films except one, perhaps, I think. And then, of course, Vigo's been in a lot of Cronenberg's films. And that's how their relationship started. And he got her involved in Falling. And then I have worked with Carol on a number of other projects, and that's how Carol got me involved in it. And now we have such a shorthand and such symbiotic or whatever. It's just like it just flows, and whose ideas is it and where it lands, it doesn't matter. It's just a constant vocabulary that we're always sharing and talking and discussing, and not necessarily just about what in my respect, but it could be about a word in the text. It could be about a teacup somewhere. It could be so we're very involved. We're very passionate about it all, and there's an incredible dialogue between all of us.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've been following Vigo's career, and I've seen his Cronenberg performances, and he just is an absolute Renaissance man. Like, I was blown away when then I heard he did the music for this. Like,
Yeah.
what an incredible talent! I can't even believe it. And obviously, he speaks full, I think, Danish.
Oh yeah, he's of Danish background. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
The music, what was interesting is that when we shot The Dead Don't Hurt, um, we came to Canada and we shot part of it in Ontario, the beginning, and then we flew over to BC and we shot the end of it. And so those were the bookends, and then we knew visually what we then had to kind of do in the middle. But when we were in BC, when we were by the ocean and in our hotel rooms or whatever, and all of a sudden Vigo says, oh, you got to listen to the music I've composed for the film. And, I'm starting to do it and whatever. And so we're all sitting there, and as the waves are flashing by, and then we hear this music and we go, oh my God, it was just like phenomenal. And then to see the ocean, and then with that, and we just had, I just got goosebumps again. And we thought, okay, this is what we have to do now. The passion was there. I mean, and we just kind of followed with the music. So it was amazing.
Yeah, and during that closing credit scene, like oftentimes when you're at a movie, people, are bolting to get out to get to their cars and everything. But I think for the most part, everyone just sat still and watched the
Mm,
credits
mm,
roll. It was so beautiful,
mm,
such an
mm.
amazing scene.
It-
Um, so so obviously you working with Vigo and Falling led to this project with him. Did he just kind of call you up and say, "Hey, Anne, do you want to come work on this new movie with me?"
Um, Not quite like that, but pretty, it's something like this. And he said, I've got another story. Here's a script, and let me know what you think. And of course, I said, yeah, I'll follow him anywhere in the world. I mean, it's just a dream as a designer. It's just he's a dream collaborator. He's a dream person to work with, and so we got the script, and I thought, wow, what a treat. Like you go into we delve into the 1830s, then in the 1860s, and you have the coureurs de bois and the settlers and the British troops, and then you go into San Francisco Civil War, and you've got the art salons and the theater and the restaurants, and then you've got um, the merchants side and the dock side, and you've got the seamen, the Chinatown, and all the trades, and then you've got the western part of it, you know what I mean, and then you've got miners and Mexicans and cowboys, and it was just like, wow, this is like a dream. And so it was very exciting to do, like crazy.
I was going to say I bombed my Canada before 1867 or Quebec before 1867 portion in college, so I had to brush. I'll have to brush up on my French history, French Canadian history, I should say. But oh, by the way, and I was very pleasantly surprised to see that we had sort of a Canadian story within this story because my mother is French Canadian and my family's side, so that was very very cool.
Yeah.
Do you have any French
I mean,
Canadian in
I'm
your family?
actually French Canadian of base, and so it was really important to me as well that I nailed it, and then I would, give it the respect that it should have, and so I was so thrilled to be able to do, Coureurs de Bois and so forth, and even the settlers, the mum and little Vivienne, and but most of all, it was the Ceinture fléchée, which was important in the storyline because it's her father's, and then it follows Vivienne through. It's one of the threads. There's many little beats and threads through the film that just you follow if you can. It's kind of like Finding Waldo. There's all these little things, and the Ceinture fléchée, I wanted it to be a real one, and it's in that time.
Sorry, do you
It's
mind
in that
describing
time.
what that is? For because
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
actually I think I had this in my questions, but
Sorry.
it's like a sash, right?
Yeah. So the Ceinture fléchée was originally from our First Nations, Indigenous people, and then the coureurs de bois took it on, and it's a long hand woven belt that is used that is tied around the waist, and it's used to support the back when they do all the portage and the canoes and all the transportation through the waterways and so forth. And it's also used sometimes as a sash that they would put around their head and then pull whatever they had to pull through the woods. So it was a very useful thing, and it was something that's very indicative of that region and that time in Quebec. And there's different weaves to it depending of where you're from. And also, if you are of French origin, you would tie it on the left, and if you're of English origin, you would tie it on the right. So there's all these different little things, and so it was really important to us, first of all, that the all of the dead don't hurt. It's a very, we wanted honesty, we wanted truth, we wanted for it to feel real. I mean, it's a raw story that happens to be done in the 1860s and 1830s. Um, so we wanted those things to really come through, and so I found an artist that does traditional weaving in Quebec, Jean-Maurice Côté, and approached him and asked him, and we had to build a few of them because of the different things that happened in the film. Um, and I was so thrilled that he was able to weave them for us. And it's just a beautiful piece, and it's nice to see it to come through. And then what's interesting is even the colors. We started to use that as a base for the storyline as well, in that Vivienne is the heart of the story of The Dead Don't Hurt. So we decided to do more reds and really earthy colors, even in her homeland in the 1830s. And the red as well in the Ceinture fléchée is part of it. And so when you see young Vivienne, she's in terracottas and reds. And then when we jump 30 years later in San Francisco, and Vivienne now is in more kind of salmon colors and more deep roses. And then when she gets to Elk Flat, then that starts to wash down a little bit, and then it's a bit more saturated.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the Bonhomme, the mascot, has that same sash, if I recall. Bonhomme, it's like
Yes.
it looks like the Michelin tire
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. Carnival. Yeah. Yeah.
Carnaval,
Yeah. For
exactly.
the
Um,
carnival, and yeah. Yeah. It's a different weave though.
oh, it is a different weave. Okay, and what kind of dye
Yeah.
stuff would they have used for the actual threads to weave it with?
Um, I think that's why some of the colors are, you can't have too many different colors at the very beginning. The more modern ones are very, very colorful now. And then the Métis ones, the one from Winnipeg, then those are actually even brighter and a different weave once again. But ours are a little bit richer than what they would have actually been in the 1830s. Um, but some of that was he hand dyed the actual wool, but just because we didn't want it to, we wanted to be a bit vibrant, so we took a little bit of artistic license there.
Yes, because I was thinking, would it be like, they probably, I guess, would have used local, like woad or something, or madder, or those types of flower-based types of dyes, I would think.
I would think sure, but I would think for definitely it would be actually, can you just hold on one second? I'll just show you.
Sure. Sorry, I'm pushing on this. I'll get Justin to edit this part.
Actually have here.
Oh, oh, nice. From show and tell.
So this is a Ceinture fléchée, and this is an actual real one from the 1830s. Um, and you can see the reds in it, and even fléchée is an arrow in French, and you can see the arrow pattern. Um, and this is the pattern of l'Assomption, which is from the 1830s. Um, so ours, the blues are very faded, and the greens and the yellows as well. So ours is a little bit more vibrant than those colors because we wanted to kind of hit those beats. And to the flow of it, when you get to San Francisco, we the color ranges there are more rubies, ruby green, emerald greens, I mean, and some deeper colors. And so again, it's the flow from the fléchée, but those are all kind of uh, subtle little inside things of it.
That's amazing. I love that. I love that that thread that it goes through the whole movie. It's hard for me because I only
Mhm.
saw it once in the theater, and then I can't, like, I'm
Mhm.
just sort of having to go by my
Mhm.
memory, which is
Mhm.
sometimes hard when you've only seen a movie once. So, okay, so my next question for you is, so what was your design process like for when you were, after you got the script and everything and got the
Yeah.
job?
I think that we had uh, as we were all delving into all the different aspects of research, one thing that Vigo kept sending us was these list of westerns to look at, and what he liked, what he didn't like, and then vice versa for us as well. We would just kind of keep flowing, just some visuals to kind of get a pulse of what we wanted to do and what visually was important to us. And I think one of the most important films for me, anyways, in it was Bad Company, and Althea Silbert designed that. Silbert, I think.
Oh,
Um,
and sorry, what was the name of that movie?
Yeah, it's an old western. It was done, I think, in the '80s, perhaps, maybe. Not one of the John Wayne one, but so Bad Company, I think, was one of the westerns that we looked at that resonated with me. And Anthea Silbert was a costume designer who's, Oscar-winning, incredible designer. And what I got out of that was that each of those cowboys um, had a completely individual feel to them and texture to them. And I think that was one of the things that was really important to us in this film, in that not just our leading actors, but every single one of them, and even all of the background as well. That you had different silhouettes, the hat shapes. I mean, everyone had a different hat shape. Um, their coats, from the frock coats to the sack coats to whichever. So that, I think, is what stood out and what was made it interesting. And it wasn't just, however great the spaghetti westerns are. Um, it's a total genre. Then this, we wanted, the story to come through. So that was one of the important beats of it. And then after that, then I just started to do research like crazy, like in all, dissecting, all the different pieces from the miners to the, the Civil War and so forth. And you just gather and gather folders of it, and you go, deep down. You just kind of start spiraling into the web and googling and God knows what. And then I have an incredibly extensive book library at home. And then you start. Then I do lookbooks, and which are kind of like mood boards, and it's the visual bible of the show. And I just find that, and I really put a lot of attention to it, and my choices of even what pictures I put in there. Then I have a discussion then with, I presented to Vigo, and then we just discuss what we like in general and some of the pieces. And then what's so great about it is that a lot of the shows, a lot of the films sometimes that I do are in different countries, and the language, uh, there's a language barrier. So at least then you've got a visual that you can kind of go, this is towards what I want, and it just helps, to hit the mark so much faster. Also, the actor, when the actor first comes to your fitting, you're usually the very first one that they meet. And then then I, post the visuals all over, and then they always kind of get engrossed by it and go, wow, okay, this is the world I'm getting into. And then they can understand their character better, and it just starts to flow like that. So that was the beginning of it. And then once I've got like the world kind of created, then I zone into then the different character as the actors are being cast.
And the other question I had, you've sort of touched on it a little bit, is so Vigo. I know he said this actually at the Q&A. He was mentioning that he emails you. He would send you and the production designer pictures. So how involved was Vigo in the actual process of designing? Like, would he come in on fittings with you, or would you just send him pictures after? How did that all work?
Um, no, he doesn't. He doesn't come into the film. That's where he's very, very respectful. And yes, he just, he's like between Vigo, Carol, and I, we have a constant flow of visuals that we just, keep going. And whose initial idea is it, and whose initial photo is it, or a painter, or a sculpture, or a piece of something, or a piece of fabric. I couldn't tell you. I think what's great is that there's an open dialogue at all time. There's never any doors, and it's not, because filmmaking is such a collaborative thing. There's a true collaboration here, and um, of course, we're all trying to get what Vigo's vision in his head is to produce that, and to create that. But he's open to, you know, the flow of it. Um, in our, as we got the initial designs, kind of figured out the big strokes, and then he doesn't micromanage. He actually trusts you and lets you go with it. And um, there are some times where I would kind of go, oh, I should show you the photographs, because I was get so busy because it was such an insane schedule. And he never bucked, and it was always great. And um, it's a very cherished relationship, I have to say.
During the screening, and then after during the Q&A, this one woman asked a question, and it sort of reminded me, actually, years ago I went to see Pulp Fiction, and after the movie, someone in the audience asked the usher if they could get their money back because the reels were out of order. So, which of course they weren't. It's non-linear. So in this sort of storytelling, we have some non-linear storytelling going on. And this woman asked, she didn't understand that there were two timelines happening. So through the costumes, what did you try to do? By the way, I totally got it. But what did you try to do to show those different timelines through
I think
costumes?
there's two main characters that you can kind of see a little bit the timelines. It's more, we actually jump to different environments, so that it does help the timeline, the silhouettes a little bit. Um, for Vivienne, you've got the early timeline where she's very, very young, so that's easy. And then once you jump to the San Francisco in 1860s, there she's a little more coordinated together, and the colors are a little more intense. Um, and she's a little more traditional in the sense, she has a bonnet. She has her straw hat when she's in the flower stalls. Um, and then when she goes into Elk Flats, which is 5 years, kind of over a 5 year span over there, then the colors starts to desaturate. She gets a little bit more delicate in the colors, and more washed out. And then she starts to also change. She starts using some of Olsen's clothes interjected with hers, um, because it would be a reality of it. And for instance, for Olsen, I really wanted to have, he's got his frock coat, he's got his sack coat. And then I thought, okay, well, he's a carpenter. He would have something else and then also because there's so many different days, but uh, their closets are quite small. And so I designed this kind of period Carhartt jacket that I thought he would have. And so it's a canvas coat, short coat, that's period appropriate, but I haven't seen any references of it. It's just design, but she starts to wear it, sleeves rolled up, and then she starts to wear his old Stetson as well instead, and so there's a mixture of that, and then for him, he's so well traveled, well worn, he's got lots of life there. In his earlier days, he only has a mustache; he doesn't have a beard. Um, but then he still has the same clothes, but again, it's a bit more mismatched afterwards. And he's got a full beard, and uh, those are some of the visuals for them. The one thing that we also had a lot of thought about is, like, for instance, when she leaves from San Francisco to go to Elk Flat, on the horse, when she packs things, okay, so she packs the chair that you see that was her mother's, um and what else did she bring on that horse? Like, there can't be that much. And then when she arrives in the down at the bottom of the desert in the mountains, um there's no big closets there, there's just hooks. So again, it has to be quite minimal, and you can't have it to be them changing all the time. And the one thing that we really, really, really felt strongly about was we didn't want this to be a costume period fashion show. We wanted it to be incredibly real, and a sense of honesty, and the story. And the story itself, it's what it's all about. It just happens to be in the 1860s. So that was important, so that it doesn't become, you know, a continuous change all the time. Um, and then the one thing that for to do in that narrative, what we did is, when we were in Civil War 1860s in San Francisco, the hoop skirts, we decided consciously not to have the really, really big skirts. I mean, actually got, toned it down. Um, Again, just to make it more accessible as an audience. And the same as when you're out in Elk Flats, we have the frontier dresses. There we had a lot of them made in Madrid, in Spain, from Paris Costumes, and they again, the petticoats and that, we didn't have any of the hoop skirts down there, because we just thought they're going to be riding horses. They're going to be also the women are going to be doing their gardening and so forth. They don't have maids to put their corsets on. They did have corsets, but we just kept it more real. So those were kind of some of the things that visually we kind of did.
Yeah, actually, yeah, no, because I was going to ask you about the silhouettes. Like, I was just going off of my own, okay, trying to, recall my costume history. And when I was watching it, to me, it felt period correct. It looked like the silhouettes and the fabrics and everything were period correct. But I mean, it sounds like in some cases you did take some license, but I didn't feel that. Does that make sense?
Mm. Yeah. I mean, the thing is that with period costume films, um, we're not doing documentaries. And I think what's really important is to do your research extensively at the beginning, and then you really understand the shapes, and the emphasis on different things, and the silhouettes. And then once you get a body, because they're more modern bodies than the bodies that were from then, it's changed. You know how to get the feeling across of the time period. Um, and you can take some, artistic license here and there, and to make sure that you get your point across, or your visual needs of it. And I think we were able to achieve that. And it was trying to get uh, natural fabrics, and not to use any synthetics, because it doesn't lie the same way. It doesn't wrinkle, and we wanted wrinkles. We wanted realism, the same as, like, if you look at any photographs and even paintings of that time, the shoulders, even of the men, even though they had tailors, were never perfect. They were always a little crooked and so forth. And that was something that was important to us as well, again. Um, So I think, by doing those things and the color palette that we used, we were able to kind of get a feel for the different worlds we were trying to recreate.
Now, I know you had a lot of different locations you had to work with. You spoke about you started, I think you said you started in Ontario and then you went to BC and then you had to go to Durango. Were there any other locations that you worked at?
Um, it was very challenging and it was very pressing time wise as well. It's an independent feature film, it's not a huge budget one. And we were predominant. It's a co-production between Mexico and Canada predominantly, and there's some other countries as well. But um, Mexico does not have any period costume rental houses, so we started. My assistant and I. We went to Madrid, to Spain, to Paris Costumes, and we pulled. It was insane. We pulled and we pulled and we pulled boots and hats and corsets and you name it, to ship to Mexico. They also made a whole variety of frontier dresses for us. They also made a whole variety of dresses for the Civil War for San Francisco. Then we moved from there. We went to Mexico City. We set up a team there and we started to build some of our costumes there. While I was coordinating with a team in Ontario to do that section of it, the 1830s, and was all done in Ontario. Then I had another team in BC that I was coordinating with at the same time with dyers and breakdown and zooms and trying to see the color exactly or whatever. It was tricky. And the time zones, of course, of all of it. And same thing with Spain at the same time. And then I had another team in Durango that was setting up. And then after 6 weeks in Mexico City, we closed down our shop, we put everything in a truck, and we moved it and arrived to Durango, and then we set up shop there. We shot in Ontario, the beginning of the film, or the beginning of the 1830s, and then we shot the end of the film in BC, and then the rest of it was shot in Durango and in the mountains in the Sierra Madre and Mexiquilo and all over in Scorpion Country and dust, and it was insane, but it was an incredible experience.
Yeah, and I mean, in BC and Ontario, I think you were shooting in the fall. At least it looked like it was the fall because of
Yes,
the colors, the
yes,
maple leaves.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it must have been super hot, like in Durango. Like, what time of the year were you shooting?
It was it was we were there. We were there. Let me think. We shot when we were shooting. It was in October to December. Um, the mornings were freezing. Sometimes we had frost. And then as soon as the sun came up, it would be like in the 30s and 40s Celsius. I mean, just be peeling off like crazy, and it was like her belt buckle, Vivienne's belt buckle. We had two belts and we thought we'd be fine with that. But then the buckle just melted and just snapped, the metal just snapped in half. So we had to kind of rush. And thankfully, we had gotten the buckle in Mexico City. And then we had some people trying to find it to, get us some more. And then, uh, yeah, so it would be like incredibly hot. And we had to be careful with it's Scorpion Country like crazy. So we couldn't put anything on the ground. And um so that was tricky, and the dust, like, oh my god, I ate so much dust, it's just unbelievable. But and then we'd travel to the bottom of the mountains, or in these dune buggies, or sometimes on a horse or whichever. But it was a definite experience, and the Mexicans are so wonderful to work with, and very pleasant.
So, see, anyone who's watching this, you now understand the pain and suffering that the wardrobe team has to go through to bring you a beautiful costume palette to the screen, right? Like it's crazy when you think about it, all the stuff, all the machinations behind the scenes. And then I guess you didn't really have to add sweat to the costumes because was it just natural?
I think there's just a few instances where we had to match it up, and that was it. Um, the breakdown, we tried to do some beforehand, but we didn't have to do a lot because the hems would just kind of, we'd have like a 3 to 4 inch just dust all around it, which was perfect. Or even the boots or whatever. I mean, we didn't have to do a lot on that section of it, but the fabrics themselves, of course, we had to kind of paint into because otherwise it's flat and you need to kind of give it some nuances and some life to it. Um, but yeah, no, it had its challenges.
Uh, Now I know Vivienne. She's been sort of described as in this role as a feminist icon. I don't know if you've heard that. It's sort of
Mhm.
this version of a Western is from a woman's perspective, which is sort of unusual. Now, but given that she's this like really strong, capable woman, I noticed though that her fabrics and her clothing was always still very romantic, very feminine. Was that sort of an approach that you decided to take with her?
Yes, because I mean the thing is that what was really interesting with the film is that Vigo wrote it, and it's a man writing it, but it's with an incredible perspective of the from the woman's side of it, and how she in this very male world and very harsh world of the frontier of like the kind of cowboys western type, um, and uh, it's because the beginning of the story, the beginning of the film, you kind of get, okay, this is a western. You get the bang of it, which I'm not going to disclose until you see it, and then it just kind of filters, and then it's from her side of point of view, and it's like, we're women as women, whatever creed, whatever color, whatever religion we are, and so forth. We're half the population in this world, and uh, so often the westerns have always been from the male side of view, but I mean there were women out there in the outbacks and everything, and so it's really interesting to see her side of it. And what we wanted to make sure is that it doesn't uh, it's the yin and the yang. Do you know what I mean? It's just like you can be still very feminine, but be very strong at the same time. And we wanted to make sure that that kind of came through as well. So when she is out in the elk flats in Nevada desert and so forth, um, you've got still the softness is there, and the colors. We made sure that it was also, it just was interesting because the sun was so bright, and the light in there was incredible, and we wanted that to reflect as well within her. And but then there's a juxtaposition with the harshness of the reality of it. So that's when she starts to kind of how she puts together some of her outfits, and borrows from Olsen as well. His jacket, his hat, even like her belt that we designed for her. I mean, that became a very utility thing. Then she'd put her gun in it, or she always had her little purse kind of attached to it, and so those were all kind of the beats that we wanted to make sure that you got the balance of both sides, and I think that's what makes it interesting.
Western Jeffries, who's played by Solly McLeod, who, by the way, is in House of the Dragon, has a very, very, very pivotal scene in House of the Dragon. And I suspect he's going to be like just watching him in this. I think he's going to be a huge star. Like, I don't know what your response to that
Absolutely.
is. Yeah, but he was
I mean,
striking. He kind of reminds
Sully
me of.
is like so incredible. I just love him to bits. Um, I mean, he's British, and then he wanted to make sure that he hit this really well, and I think he nails it. Um, and he's our villain in our story, and he was just like, he just wanted to make so sure that Vivienne was okay, or that when he did whatever he did and so forth, and um, uh, he's he's really a true, beautiful, beautiful human being.
Yeah, it's really funny because I didn't even know it was like, obviously I'd seen him in House of the Dragon. His accent to me, I mean, I'm Canadian, but was completely perfect as far as I could tell. I could not
Mm,
tell he was British at all. And it wasn't
mm,
until I looked up his bio,
mm,
I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the same actor from House of the
mm.
Dragon. But what I wanted to ask you, is he the only one in black? I suspect he was. He's kind of your archetypal man in black. Did you purposely decide
Mm.
to do that, have that palette for him?
Yeah, we tried to I mean, the whole film we're trying to not trying to stereotypically do things, but we wanted at the very beginning of the film, which is quite a strong scene, and to make sure we knew who the villain was. And so Weston is our bad guy, who's Sully. We did him all in black, but there's some softness to it as well because he's nuanced. You don't quite know as you get to know him better, how bad is he, or he's at another side of him, and it keeps you going for a while. And to get that, I mean, I just made sure that like his hat, it became so important. The bands of the hat, not just the shape of the hat, but the types of bands of the hat, also the stampede straps, like some were woven, some were flat, and his where it was important to do that. But we added all these kind of feathers as well in his hat, so that there's a bit of softness there. And then you have some velvets on him, so that, again, there's a softness that's there, even though he's all in black. But he does have some grays, and because there's some grays in his character, and then also he's got a green vest at one point. Uh, but and then he's got the biggest spurs, though. That's all what it's all about. And you can hear him before you can see him.
Yes, yes, exactly. Sorry, I've lost what I was going to say about it. Maybe we'll come back. Okay, I'll just move to the next question,
Yeah.
and if it comes,
Yeah.
it slipped. It was something about him. Um, So yeah, no, I was going to say, it's sort of interesting with the Me Too movement, that sort of his whole character. No spoilers in
Mm,
this, but
mm,
just how it was approached. And I didn't ever root for him, but I definitely sort of did feel for him. Oh, I know what
mm,
I wanted to say. You could also see that he comes from money, that there's some money there,
mm,
right?
yeah.
I mean, he's able to sort of lounge most of the day at the
Yeah.
local saloon,
Yeah.
right? So you'd have to
Yeah.
come from money to be able to. He's
Yeah.
sort of a young man of
Yeah.
privilege, I
Yeah.
guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. But it's those little dichotomies that's interesting about his character, because even, for instance, like his vest, the backing of his vest, because there are times in the saloon he doesn't have his coat on, his frock coat on, and I for him I had the back, it was laced, and again it's a bit softer and a bit a bit flowing because it gathers in the back. Um, and so it just gives him those other sides of him that you kind of go, who is he exactly? Do you know what I mean? You don't kind of know, and which is, I think, what makes it interesting.
Absolutely. I think he's an incredible character. But of
Mm,
course, now we have Holger Olsen, who's played by Viggo. And I had, heard during the interview that he wasn't supposed to be originally
mm,
cast in this role. It's
mm,
supposed to go to a younger character, I understand,
mm, mm,
but Viggo was up for it. So that must have been really fun working with him in the movie as well as him being the director.
mm,
But
mm.
I detected there were at least 3 looks for him. It sounds like there was maybe a couple more just from your conversation here. Do you want to tell me a little bit about his looks that you created for him? And also, I loved his beautiful green shirt that starts the movie off. I just thought that was gorgeous.
Um, Definitely, like for Olson, he's he's a carpenter. He's a well-traveled man. He's had a lot of life experience. So we really wanted to make sure that that kind of translated it in his costumes. Um, and so we have, he's got kind of 3 basic silhouettes that kind of nuances within that. One is a frock coat with the vest and trousers, and That's when we first kind of pick him up and see him in San Francisco. But his was a canvas. Originally, I had thought maybe a denim, but then because of the blue screen behind, we couldn't do that. So we thought, okay, we'll go into a canvas, and so it's more utilitarian, a workwear, than compared to everyone else that's in San Francisco, where it's broadcloth or some nice wools and checks and so forth. But um, so there's a ruggedness there that's kind of interesting. And then he's got his sack coat, which is a deconstructed kind of shorter coat that we got this beautiful wool from Madrid, from Paris, this check. And those are two of his basic ones. And then you've got because he's a carpenter, I really wanted to do how could I get that flair of it, and I designed this kind of Carhartt short jacket, canvas jackets that I thought would be kind of useful and interesting. And it's, to my understanding, I don't think there's any out there, but this was like a prelude before the jean jacket kind of came out. And but it's the cut of it is appropriate for the time. And so he kind of, within that and some of his vest, we just rotated it and nuanced it. And then he's got a red handkerchief necktie, and then he's got like a yellow one afterwards. Um, and then the colors were well worn and saturated. And one of the important things was, like for the check coat, was when he's traveling, because he does a lot of travel through the woods, and some of it is the desert, some of it is in the deep forest, which is supposed to be Oregon. Uh, I wanted him to stand out a little bit as well, so we could see him, in the big vistas. And so decided upon that check that would kind of go with it, but would still, you'd kind of be able to see him. So those were some of his choices.
I loved his check jacket. That was like one of my favorites. And I thought the canvas coat, or like the frock coat that he was wearing, I thought it was leather, like, or maybe like a suede or something. It was hard to
Mm.
tell. But it was really, really interesting. So those were, I found those two help. Like you said, he wore a mustache in one scene and then the full beard later. So I thought it was a really great contrast there. And then he also has this sort of military costume, which I'm assuming is he's had this packed up in a trunk somewhere and then he decides to put it on again for when he goes
Um,
away to war.
Actually, it's when he's conscripts, when he goes into when he signs up to go into the Civil War. They give it to him. They give pieces to him. They don't have they at that time, it was at the early stages of the Civil War. So and then depending where they fought and so forth, it's we really researched like what they would have. And some of it, because they were trying to get as many people as they could, so you wore your own boots, you wore your own hat. They gave you your trousers and your coat, and a belt, and that was kind of it. Um, we decided to kind of put a little bit of flair, and he had his own necktie, handkerchief necktie with it. He also decides to put because he had fought previously beforehand with the Danes, his medal from there. So it's just a little more textured that we put it towards. And then when he comes back, he's a bit more disheveled after 3 years, but and a little bit more broken down. But that was kind of how we wanted to portray him.
Now I know that at the beginning of this video we were talking about. So I saw this at TIFF. What's happening with the distribution? Like, when will people be able to see this movie come out?
Um, Not sure exactly, but it's looking like it will be sometimes in 2024. So not this year yet. They're still finalizing the deal, and as soon as I know, I will let you know. But it should be in the cinemas. It should be in the cinemas at some point.
Yeah, I would. This is one of those movies I think that really needs to be seen in the cinema. We
Yeah.
actually did a live stream recently where we were talking about movies that need to be seen because, with all streaming and everything, I think this is definitely one of those immersive experiences that you should have.
Because I mean, some of the places where we filmed was absolutely breathtaking, and uh, there's like one point, it feels like you're in the Grand Canyon, but we're not, and it just the vistas just goes on, and then with the Sierra Madre, I mean, and then even the end of the film when we're by, we shot in Tofino, but it's supposed to be Oregon, and the sun as it's setting, I mean, it's just like, so to see it, on your phone this big, um, you'll get some of it, but not the full splendor of it if you saw it in theater.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The cinematography is just breathtaking on this.
Mm, mm,
I can't wait to see it
mm.
again. So before I let you go, thank you. I'm keeping you long. I really appreciate you
Mm,
taking the time to do this. But before I let you go, I know you have like a couple of big projects. Like you're working. You're so busy. Do you want me to tell?
mm.
You want to tell everyone a bit about what you're working on?
The Marsh King's Daughter by Neil Berger is coming out November 3rd. It was another epic journey on that one. It's very, very intriguing. We shot that in marshes. We were so fortunate. The Daucus First Nations let us go into the reserve, and um, we drove for like an hour and a half to get to base camp, and from base camp it took us another half an hour to the marina, and the marina we took a boat, and with half an hour we arrived at this island, and then we had to hike a half an hour up, and then we shot part of it there. And so there's again some scenes in there that are like phenomenal, and but it's really intriguing, and so that will be and it's with Ben Mendelsohn and Daisy Ridley. And then I just finished working with.
Both from Star Wars.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except I don't know if Ben Mendelsohn's an evil sort of dictator in that, but
And then I just finished doing a Cronenberg film, The Shrouds, which is one of his most personal films, and with Vincent Cassel and Deanne Kruger, and that should come out sometime next year, and or contemporary-ish. And we actually designed fabrics and manufactured these fabrics, and to make the shrouds, and it's very, very exciting. So
and I have to say this is as a Canadian, I have to say you're also working on an SCTV. I think it's a special. Do you want to tell us a
yes,
little bit about that? I'm a huge SCTV fan.
uh,
I still watch them on
the
YouTube all the time, by the way. they're they're all Martin Short and all that.
so it's in the works. They're doing an SCTV special. We shot the reunion with all of the main cast from it, and that was really exciting to see all of them, and just the banter between each of them, and it's still there, and the energy is still there, and so that should be coming out at some point, but I'm not sure when.
I should tell you, I got to work with Joel Hallmeyer at the
Yes.
it was like the Hall of Fame, and I think who was one of them, either Catherine O'Hara was being inducted, or Eugene Levy, I think might have both
Yeah.
of them maybe were being inducted, and Joel Hallmeyer was there, and I got to meet him and chat about all the costuming of SCTV. It was so fun. Was he involved at all?
He came as a guest. Because there was a big at the Elgin Theater, we had a huge kind of reunion on stage and so forth, and Jewel was there, and he was highly mentioned, and he did some brilliant, brilliant, incredible work with all of them.
Yeah, if anyone in our audience doesn't know what I'm talking about, this show SCTV, it's like an iconic Canadian television show that ran, I think it ran in the 80s. All like,
Mhm.
Andrea Martin was in it, Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara, Martin Short.
Martin
Um,
Short.
Yes. And of course, they've all gone down. Well, they have all of their careers have tanked.
Mm, mm. Yeah.
I just finished watching the finale of Only Murders in the Building, which is such a great show.
Yeah.
Great costumes, by the way, too, everyone. Well, anyway, I want to thank you so much, Anne, for coming and spending time with me. This has been such a blast. And I know people can find you on Instagram. Is that the best place for people to find you, follow you, see what you're up to?
Absolutely. And then also I have a website, Anne with an E dash Dixon.com. Some of my work is there, and some of the process if some people are interested. Um, and absolutely, get in touch with me whichever way and either way, and I'll respond to you and enjoy your feedback.
So I'll put links to that in below the video so everyone can just easily find you. So thanks so much. Thanks everyone for spending time with us today. And hopefully we'll have Anne back again.
Real pleasure, Heidi. Thank you. Yeah, it's a real pleasure. Thank you.